The movie opens with old news footage of terrorist attacks. The scene then changes to a child drawing on a cardboard box. It is 7:45 in the morning on September 11, 2001, in Kentucky. A couple is talking about their fireplace while unpacking the many boxes in their new home. As the man, Nelson, gets his daughter ready, they hear the breaking news about the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center. A group of soldiers is wading through a river during their morning training exercise. After reaching the other side, military vehicles arrive to pick them up. The soldiers start complaining about the long wait and ask what happened. Milo asks if they really have no idea, and one of them replies that they have been in the river the whole time. Nelson arrives at the office and asks to get his team back. Lieutenant Colonel Bowers tells him that he no longer has a team because he was assigned to a staff position. At Nelson's request, Bowers simply points him toward his desk. When Nelson enters the cafeteria, he meets up with his former team. Dillard angrily brushes him off, but Nelson explains that he made that decision for his family, although things are different now. He promises that they will be part of the fight before walking away. Spencer confronts Bowers and tears up his retirement papers. Since the paperwork was never officially filed, he is still a chief warrant officer. He convinces Bowers to let them put the team back together, especially because of their experience. Bowers finally agrees. On October 16, 2001, the team arrives in Uzbekistan. Nelson and Spencer receive a briefing from Mulholland. If selected, they will help Dostum, an Afghan warlord with the Northern Alliance, capture Mazar-i-Sharif, also known as Mazar. Since Dostum has the troops, the intelligence, and knowledge of the terrain, the team will be sent into northern Afghanistan, where they will meet a CIA operative who will introduce them to Dostum. Their mission is to earn Dostum's trust, become part of his militia, and fight alongside him as he advances toward the Taliban strongholds. Once they reach the right positions, they will call in close air support, while Dostum's forces handle the rest. Nelson admits that he has very little experience, but he honestly states the situation as it is, which impresses Mulholland. Nelson gathers his team and briefs them on their mission to support Dostum. He explains how important it is to retake the city of Mazar, which serves as the main stronghold and the backbone of the Taliban's entire northern force. Nelson also tells them they have only 21 days, and they will leave later that night. The team lands about 40 miles south of Mazar. At first, they mistakenly identify two men as enemies. Some of Dostum's men are understandably unhappy with Nelson's team, giving both sides a rough start. They hike to a place known as the Alamo and set up camp. Their escort explains the current situation within the Northern Alliance. 3 separate militias remain, one led by Dostum, another by Atta, and the last by Mohakik. Unfortunately, the 3 leaders do not get along with one another. Dostum finally arrives, and Nelson walks over to introduce himself. However, Dostum mistakes Spencer for the captain. The team follows Dostum and presents the gifts they brought. They first offer horse feed, which receives only a mild reaction. Someone then suggests giving him vodka, and Nelson agrees. He hands the bottle to Dostum, who opens it, smells it, then surprises everyone by speaking fluent English before taking a drink. Nelson says he was told that Dostum could not speak English. Dostum simply shrugs and replies that he never spoke English to their escort. Dostum then asks about the bombs he was promised. Nelson tells him they will provide them, but only after Dostum points out the exact Taliban positions. Dostum quickly agrees. As they prepare to leave, they are given only 6 horses even though there are 12 men. Nelson tells Spencer that he does not want to split up the team, but Spencer reminds him that at least Dostum's men are willing to help. With no other choice, 6 of them, including Nelson, ride with Dostum, while Spencer and the other 5 stay behind at the Alamo. On the outskirts of Beshkum, a woman is kneeling on the ground with books beside her, crying. A man named Raisin kicks the books away before walking over to a little girl who is also crying. He asks her several questions, and the little girl answers them without hesitation. He praises her, then questions the other young girls, who also answer correctly. Their father desperately begs Raisin to stop, but someone pulls the burqa off the woman, and Raisin points a gun at her head. He shoots her in front of everyone. Raisin then reminds the crowd that under Sharia law, no girl over the age of 8 is allowed to receive an education. Meanwhile, Nelson, Dostum, and their men travel through the village of Dahi, about 12 miles south of Mazar. Everyone watches them as they pass. Nelson asks Dostum why they have stopped, and Dostum says they are picking up supplies. The group arrives at the Kobaki Caves, which will serve as their headquarters. Michael points out that they are out of communication range, meaning he cannot get a signal unless he climbs to a nearby plateau. Dostum then comments that Nelson's team is too slow, so they will wait until morning to kill the Taliban instead. That night, while everyone is resting, Nelson asks Dillard if he noticed how quickly Dostum's men got ready when they were told to move. He believes the Taliban will probably react just as fast. Dostum asks Nelson why his men are standing guard when his own men are already protecting them as honored guests. Nelson explains that his men are standing with him, not against Dostum. The next day, the men reach the outskirts of the Taliban-controlled village of Beshkum. Dostum points out Raisin's group, but Nelson explains that he needs to get close enough to provide the exact coordinates for the airstrike. Dostum refuses, saying it is too dangerous. He tells Nelson that 500 of his own men can die before even one American is injured because if an American dies, the U.S. government could leave, and Afghanistan would lose the war against the Taliban. The argument continues until Dostum pulls out his radio and contacts Raisin directly, telling him that he has brought the Americans with him. Nelson gives the signal to bomb Beshkum, but because the coordinates are not accurate enough, the bombs miss their target. Nelson moves closer with Koffers and one of Dostum's men to provide new coordinates. As he does, Taliban fighters move in and open fire. Dostum orders more of his men to protect Nelson and Koffers while the rest of Nelson's team joins the fight. After the correct coordinates are finally given, they pull back to the caves. Nelson asks why they are not attacking now that the bombing is over, as Dostum originally requested. Dostum simply replies that it was never part of the plan and says they will attack the following day. The next morning, Michael provides the correct coordinates, allowing the bombs to hit several Taliban positions and destroy part of their supplies. As soon as the bombing ends, Dostum orders his men to charge while telling the Americans to stay where they are. Nelson suddenly notices enemy tanks moving in. He requests another airstrike, but the aircraft has already run low on fuel and is forced to return to base. Dostum's men begin to lose ground as they are killed one after another. Nelson orders his team to cover Dostum and his men while they retreat, then rushes into the battle to help them. After the fighting, as the men recover, Nelson confronts Dostum about the Taliban supply route, accusing him of hiding information that could have helped them. The two argue, and Dostum replies that Nelson and his men are not willing to pay the true price of war. He says they think like soldiers when they need to fight like warriors. Later that night, Dostum wakes Nelson and asks him to follow him. He finally tells Nelson everything he knows about Raisin. Dostum admits that he already knew about the Taliban supply line, but he never expected them to have that many weapons. After hearing everything, Nelson orders Dillard to strike the Taliban supply route. Back at the Alamo, Spencer wakes up from his nap as Nelson. Nelson radios Spencer and asks if the men were able to get horses. Spencer confirms that they did, and Nelson tells them to follow after splitting the team once again. The rest of the team arrives at the Kobaki Caves, and they call in another airstrike against Raisin and his men. As they move through the wreckage, Raisin and his fighters quietly wait for them. Spencer finally realizes that the enemy is still alive after noticing movement, and Raisin's men suddenly open fire. Some of Dostum's men begin to fall back, but Dostum insists on pushing forward. Nelson orders the rest of his team to provide cover and follow Dostum. As they get closer to Raisin's position, Dostum finds a rocket launcher, aims it, and fires at the enemy, helping liberate the village of Beshkum. At the northern edge of the Jianji Gap, Dillard, Bennett, and Koffer successfully provide the correct coordinates, allowing an airstrike to destroy the Taliban outpost and its weapons cache. Meanwhile, Nelson, Dostum, and their men stop at the sugar caves on the edge of the Jianji Gap to rest. They are now much closer to Mazar. Nelson speaks with Dostum and tells him about the new development. Dostum says they are already close to pushing the Taliban farther through the Gianji Gap. Nelson realizes this means they could reach Mazar by the next day. Even though he knows how Dostum might react, Nelson still tells him about the team supporting Atta's militia. Dostum becomes furious and sees it as a betrayal. Nelson tries to explain that the plan is meant to guarantee victory, but Dostum only cares about the possibility that Atta might reach Mazar first. Nelson decides to continue the mission even without Dostum and his men, and Dostum leaves with his forces. The Americans move forward with their plan. Spencer and Black take the eastern flank to call in airstrikes. Milo, Jackson, and Essex secure the western flank. Dillard, Coffer, and Bennett cover the northern flank to stop any reinforcements coming from Mazar. The attack begins with an airstrike targeting several enemy tanks. Before Spencer can give the next set of coordinates, a group of Taliban fighters approaches carrying white flags. The team is unsure whether they are actually surrendering or setting up an ambush. Spencer tries to speak with them, but one of the men suddenly shouts and pulls the pins from the grenades strapped to his vest. The men on the northern flank are also discovered and come under heavy enemy fire. Just when the situation starts looking hopeless, Dostum and his men return to the battlefield. Moments later, several rockets hit Dostum's men and the southern flank. The team realizes they must destroy the BM-21 rocket launcher before it fires again. With no other option, Nelson leads the charge toward the BM-21. Dostum's men immediately follow him into the attack. As the battle turns in their favor, Raisin tries to escape, but his vehicle gets stuck in a ditch. Dostum walks up to him, and before Raisin can raise his weapon, he is shot in the head. A medevac helicopter arrives just as the battle ends, and Spencer is immediately loaded on board for evacuation. After the fight, they begin chasing after Dostum, who is riding toward Atta. Nelson fears that Dostum intends to kill his rival, so he calls out to him. By the time they catch up, however, Dostum has already reached Atta. Instead of attacking him, he greets Atta and makes peace with him, at least for the moment. And finally returning home to his family. What makes this story stand out isn't just the action or the intense battles. It's how a small group of soldiers had to earn the trust of people from a completely different culture while fighting an enemy that knew the land far better than they did. Every decision they made came with huge risks, and one mistake could have changed the outcome of the mission. The movie also shows that winning a war isn't only about having better weapons. Trust, leadership, and teamwork can be just as important. Even when disagreements threatened to tear the alliance apart, both sides eventually realized they needed each other to succeed. In the end, this is more than just a war movie, it's a story about courage, sacrifice, and the determination to finish a mission against overwhelming odds.